What is up, everybody? This is Anthony with VR 365. What is going on? It is Friday. It is 5 p.m. and it is September 13th. It's Friday the 13th. Oh my God. It's scary. But guess what? I got a special guest today, folks. We've got Lincoln Klay in the building. Lincoln, what is going on?
How you doing? Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You know, it's funny because I was joking with some people in the Discord server because we have a thumbnail image for you and you're looking pretty big, pretty bulky, right? And I was saying that this is like back-to-back linebackers I'm interviewing. Like last week I had a middle linebacker, now I got an outside linebacker interviewing. Two big boys in the VR game, right? Both bodybuilders and stuff. You and Gamertag VR.
Yeah, I've been lifting weights for quite a while. I've been lifting weights off and on for about 25, 27 years or something like that. I'm no spring chicken.
Yeah, yeah. I'm brand new to it. I mean, I've screwed around with it. I mean, I barely do it. I do just a little bit here and there, but yeah, it's funny because like Mame Fan, this one guy that would guest on our show once in a while, he was kind of a bodybuilder guy. And then of course Gamertag VR, he's definitely a bodybuilder guy. You as well. So it's a streak of bodybuilders on the show. Mame Fan's gonna get jealous. Okay, but what we're gonna do today, actually what I wanted to do, guys, is we're gonna definitely interview Lincoln and we're gonna kind of get into his past history, how he got into VR gaming. But we also want to cover a little bit of news because it is Friday. There's still stuff that's going on. I actually have a major correction to make. Like I made a major mistake on this show. One of the videos that I have, major mistake. So I got to correct that. There's a brand new game that we got a trailer for from it's on the Oculus YouTube channel. It is called Death Lap. Looks pretty good. It's going to be coming to the Oculus Quest and to the Oculus Rift as well. And also we're going to be giving away a key to Killing Floor Incursion, and that is courtesy of Paolo Triani. So we really appreciate Paolo helping us out, giving us a key to Killing Floor Incursion. It is the Steam version of the game, and a lot of people are actually getting their hands on that game now because they're buying eSpire 1, and if you buy it on Steam, you get Killing Floor Incursion. So maybe that's how Paolo got it. I don't know. But anyway, we got a code for that, so we're going to be giving away that. But why don't I start off first and foremost, a major correction. Man, I really blew it. Okay, so hold on here. I'm going to go ahead and get this trailer that I accidentally was saying a completely different game. Okay, real mistake here. So just the other day, I had a clip that was uploaded on YouTube, and this was also on a Twitch episode where I was talking about a game called Soul Scathe, which is by Blue Light Construct, is the developer of it. And this video right here is not Soul Scathe, but I was using this video. I was talking about it and I was like looking up videos, and this is Soul Keeper. And I accidentally thought this was another Soul Scathe video. And I was like, man, look, they did Skyrim and stuff. So it's got like Skyrim looking thing. You can go into a castle. You can talk to people. You can go down. There's some whitewater rafting on a medieval creek. You can do all. Now this is Soul Keeper VR. This is the wrong trailer. So I made a major mistake, and somebody mentioned this in that video. I got to also post something in that video and say I made a major mistake. I just got my wires crossed here, folks. And so Soul Scathe, although it looks good, doesn't have all this extra stuff. And so I apologize for that. Definite correction right there. One other thing I want to do real quick before we get going too far as well is I do want to thank some of our early Patreon supporters. I like to do this every once in a while if I can remember to do this. And so I did want to take a quick thank you to Sean Dowling, who has supported the VR 365 Patreon for like 7 months. So this guy's been down with the program, down by law for a while. So Sean Dowling, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And then also, real quick, wanted to thank the very first Patreon supporter I've ever had, the first guy up. If I can find, oh man, maybe I don't have his name on here. Hold on, I got to find it. I must have put it in the wrong spot. So let's see here. What did I do? I must have copied it into some other thing. You know what? I'm going to have to, I screwed up, guys. Screwed up live on air. I copied his thing somewhere. Must have copied it into the wrong folder. Our very first Patreon supporter. Oh, well. I'll go ahead and get to that later. Accidents will happen. Okay, so let me go ahead and grab another random trailer. The good news is my OBS is actually kind of working right now. Like 5 minutes before the show, it was on tweak status, and I was really worried about how that was going to affect things. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to also mention, folks, before we get too far along here, is why don't we go ahead and go over to the webinar. And I did want to point this out because this is actually pretty good right here. The daily deal over on Oculus is Windlands 2. It is 33% off. This is $20. We've got we've got under 7 hours, just under 7 hours left in this daily deal. And you might remember when it comes to Game of the Year for 2018, there were a lot of incredible contenders that I was thinking about. I was thinking about Transference. I was thinking about Red Matter. So many other good games that just don't come to mind right now, but a lot of really good games that came out in 2018. But ultimately, the game that captured my attention, the game that I just got lost in, was Windlands 2. And the reason for it, the reason why this game just blew me away, the real factor of this game that was amazing for me is the fact that when you were battling the bosses, you're moving around, you're flipping from tree to tree. There's a freaking giant mechanical monster that's trying to kill your ass. You're moving from tree to tree. You jump into midair with your bow and arrow, pull it back, Legolas style, let the arrow fly, and you could do some sick, incredible stuff. I mean, you could do some absolutely magical stuff in this game, Windlands, when you were fighting a boss. And for me, it's still the best VR combat I've ever had as an individual person going up against a boss monster. Now, it's all 360-degree arenas when you're fighting a boss, basically. The boss is moving around and you got to go all the way around it and you got to battle it, and it's a long, drawn-out process. But for me, it was one of the most incredible things. And then also just the world of Windlands 2. The world, I just thought the world was very beautiful, very colorful. It's very simple, but it's fully 3D, and you can explore every little nook and cranny of this place. And sometimes there's things that are hidden around and stuff like that. So, I'm a pretty big fan of Windlands 2. Lincoln, have you ever tried Windlands 2?
I have not. After seeing your show a couple of times, I do know that game is out there. But there's so many other games out there that VR games come a mile a minute. So
they do.
Something that might have my attention today, I might totally forget about it 2 days later if it's not at the top of my list.
Yeah, no, there are so many games coming so often that it's there's a lot of little games. People will argue and say, well, VR doesn't have enough big games. People will argue about that. Skyrim VR mods. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to mention to folks really quick, if I can find it here, is our boy Arrowin X. Yeah, good, I found it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the webinar real quick. I forgot to mention this the other day, but one of the good friends of our show, VR365, is this guy Arrowin X. I've been talking about him for a long time. He's been on our show. I think it was voice only. I don't think his webcam was working right or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was voice only. Definitely got to have him back on. This guy is a Skyrim expert. He's put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into Skyrim VR and adding every mod under the sun to it. and knowing which mods are mission critical and which mods are not that big of a deal, and which mods you could focus on, which mods do this, which mods tax your computer the most, which mods don't. Everything about Skyrim VR that you've ever wanted to know. And this is his YouTube channel, ArrowinX. It's Sanosuke1981, and he's got all these guides on here. He's got a beginner's guide, ArrowinX's Skyrim VR Beginner's Modding Guide. So definitely check this out, some of you that maybe wanted to get into the modding scene of Skyrim, which is a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. And I avoid these rabbit holes personally. You know, there's just so much going on that I kind of tend to avoid some of these games that will just completely suck up your life. And Lincoln, I know one thing that's been popular in like with Gamertag VR, and of course your guys' podcast that you do as well, is No Man's Sky. You know, everybody's talking about No Man's Sky. What about these games? Do you get caught up in games that just completely absorb you and you pretty much get lost in a singular game and you're just playing that game for like a couple of months and you're not aware of anything else going on?
The first couple of days that Skyrim was out, I had a hard time pulling myself away from it. I have it on both PlayStation VR and PC, and it's noticeably cleaner on PC, but it's still fun on both platforms. But yeah, it was one of those games where I think the first couple of nights I played it, I was on there all day. Nothing else even entered my mind as far as other games that I normally play.
Yeah, it's nice. I miss those days. Like, I kind of think about how cool it would be, like if there was no show or anything, you know, just, and I could just like, for me it would be Fallout 4 VR. That's what I pretty much tell everybody, because I like Fallout 3 was one of my favorite video games ever. I played that game. I built a computer just to play Fallout 3 better than it looked like on the Xbox 360, because I wanted even better graphics, you know what I mean? And so I played Fallout 3 and was just a Fallout 3 nut. And then when Fallout 4 came to VR, I could get lost in that, and I could just play it for hours on end and try to do these mods and stuff. But, you know, for me now, there's just too many games that are coming too rapidly. And speaking of that, we've got a brand new announcement that we found out about today. Now, this is like a kart racer battler game. It is called Death Lap, and we've got a teaser. It is a short teaser, so I'm going to probably let this puppy run twice because it's only like 16 seconds. Let's go ahead and check this out. Death Lap. It is coming. It sounds like this is more of an Oculus Quest game than anything, but it's also coming to Rift. So let's go ahead and check this one out.
To the show, my little pistons. Will you rise from the flames, or will you burn? Welcome to the show, my little pistons. Will you rise from the flames, or will you burn?
All right, yeah, so that is it. It is a very short, quick teaser trailer for Death Lap, which is coming to the Oculus Quest and coming to the Oculus Rift as well. The announcement was over there on the Oculus blog, and just the way they kind of worded it, it almost seemed like, yeah, Death Lap, it's coming to the Quest, oh, and the Rift. You know, it was kind of sounded like that. So maybe starting its life on the Quest and being up converted to the Oculus Rift, which is something that is happening. I call this Questicles, where they're really designed for the Quest because that's where the real money is, I think, in our industry. But obviously they're going to port it if they possibly can. And this is probably going to be exclusive to the Oculus platform because this trailer was on the Oculus channel. So Lincoln, what's your thoughts on like the Oculus Quest? And do you worry about the Quest becoming too popular and too much of a hit, and then Oculus doesn't really care about the Rift anymore and everything's designed for Quest? Is that a worry at all? What do you think about that?
Boy, I've got mixed feelings about that because I want to see VR make it to the mainstream, and the Oculus Quest is going to be a big part of that. But at the same time, you make a good point that if the Oculus Quest becomes the top priority for Oculus, then we might see a lot of games that's been built for the Oculus Quest and then tweaked for the Oculus Rift. So there might be a little bit of compromise in terms of functionality, graphics, gameplay, that kind of stuff. Um, but I
Have
guess
you
that's something.
Yeah, yeah. Have you tried on the Oculus Rift? Have you tried any of these games? I don't know if they don't have the demos, and that kind of sucks. They got the demos on the Quest, but they don't have the demos on the Rift. But there's a number of games like this, like Journey of the Gods is one that came over. Face Your Fears 2. Uh, what else? Dead and Buried 2. There's like a handful of these things. Shadow Point, like right when the Oculus Quest launched and all those games, and like Vader Immortal, of course, the Oculus Quest launched, and then all those games, like a lot of them came over to Rift kind of right away, or maybe a couple weeks later. Have you tried any of those?
I played Dead and Buried 2 on both the Rift and the Quest,
Okay.
and I think I tried Journey of the Gods. I've tried that demo on the Oculus Quest. I haven't tried it on Rift yet. Um, I guess I'm a person that demos are kind of hit or miss with me. A lot of times, if a game really like captures my eye, I'll just buy it without even trying the demo. I'll just go ahead and take that leap of faith and just go ahead and buy it. Um, but I think that's yeah, those are the two games. Dead and Buried look exactly the same on both the Rift and the Quest. It's hard to tell, the difference in the graphics. So yeah, you make a good point that I kind of hope that's not the future of VR, where they water down the graphics so they can, get them both on the Quest and the Rift.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's a fear. It's a major fear, but at the same time, the thing is if they are doing that, it probably is going to mean that the Quest is just running away with things, and we kind of need that. I mean, because the thing is, let's be real, man. Here we are. It is September 2019. And the truth of the matter is VR has kind of like stumbled out of the gate, It stumbled out of the gate. It like it like tripped and broke its nose for a minute there. It got back up, dusted itself off, but it seems like it still isn't, we're still a niche of a niche, or a niche of a niche, or whatever you want to say it. We're still this like little thing that's over here on the side. And we got to have something that breaks out into the mainstream. And I think the Quest is our best hope for that. One question I have for you, Lincoln, though, is do you think a $400 item, though, is still going to be too expensive for this holiday to be that Christmas gift that everybody's talking about?
That is a tough one because those who want the Oculus Quest, they want it really bad. It's not a situation where they're thinking about it. Oh, I was thinking about getting a Quest. They have their mind made up that they want it. And a month ago, these things were really tough to get. They're just now starting to get on store shelves where you can finally walk in and buy one. But I think when I bought my son's Oculus Quest, it was a situation where I had to keep checking Walmart, Best Buy every single day. And then I ended up having to drive about 45 minutes away to go get my son's Oculus Quest. And when I got there, it was the last one. So I would have to assume that the Oculus Quest is selling really well. But as far as VR stumbling, yes, it's stumbling right now. But at the same time, I don't think VR would be where it's at right now if it wasn't for the PlayStation VR, because they made it. Sony made VR affordable, even though it was $500. They made it affordable because before Sony got into the VR game, it was niche because I think it was really expensive. You're talking about $600-700 for the Oculus or the HTC Vive, along with probably spending about $1,000 for a computer that's powerful enough to push it.
Yeah, I mean we still have that's why we go back to the Quest. I mean because Well, the 399 thing, and so like if somebody like let's say you know somebody that doesn't have anything, they don't have a play. I mean, most people have PlayStation 4s. They're pretty freaking common. There's like 100 million of them around the world. So that's the good news, and that's why Sony's been so strong. But yeah, I remember back to that time where if you thought, man, somebody that's trying to start and get into VR from scratch, it's like $1,500, and that would be cheapo stuff. That is a crappy computer and the cheapest PC VR headset. And so it's going to take time for all of that to trickle down. So right now on the screen, this is a trailer. So the Vive Cosmos is a brand new thing, right? Everybody's talking about the Vive Cosmos. I had a show yesterday where I was talking about the advantages and disadvantages of the Vive Cosmos compared to the Valve Index. And this is coming on September 3rd. It's going to be $699. This is like some mixed reality video that they did with the Vive Cosmos and Swords of Gargantua. And what do you think about this headset? Because I know, like, you've got your Rift. I don't know that, and you're playing computer games with your Rift and stuff, but I'm guessing you haven't got completely caught up in the race to have everything and like constantly upgrading, like these people that own like all kinds of headsets. You know, you probably get one headset, you're good with it. What do you think about like the Valve Index and like the Vive Cosmos? Is there any thoughts of trying to upgrade to these more expensive ones, or the Rift S pretty much does what you need it to do?
The Rift definitely does what I needed to do, and I think the Rift S is an excellent buy for the money. Now, I'm not going to lie, when it first came out, I was apprehensive about the Rift S because I had the tracking issues, but once they got the tracking issues under control, I bought one, and I haven't looked back at my CV1. I think as far as the rest of the headsets goes, like the Valve Index, $1,000 is quite pricey. And I'm buying for two people because I'm buying hardware and games for my son as well, not to mention my own financial obligations. So that's kind of tough to keep up with all those headsets. $1,000 for the Vive, $700 for this Vive Cosmos. What is it? $600 for the HP Reverb.
Yeah, this is an expensive hobby, right?
Very.
I mean, pretty freaking expensive, right?
So yeah. So with that being said, I'm more than happy with the Oculus Rift, and I've seen a few videos where the resolution on the Rift S is comparable to some of the more expensive headsets. I've seen videos where the resolution of the Rift S was comparable to the Vive Pro.
Yeah, the resolution's right there. I mean, just yesterday I was talking about, well, I was calling it the Gerillo effect, which basically, because there's like 100 additional lines of resolution is what this Vive Cosmos has over like the Oculus Quest or whatever, right? It's got like 100 lines more of resolution. And I personally don't see, I mean, I don't think people can really notice it. I mean, maybe just barely. So it's like a placebo effect for me. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But there are some people that are excited with this headset because it's kind of, it's the last big new headset that we're getting probably this year. And then we're going to have to look to the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in January. And a lot of the people that are into VR 365, we have some pretty hardcore people that are into this hobby, and they're nut jobs, and they go after every headset out there. They want every headset out there. And I did see one beautiful thing about the Vive Cosmos that I have not commented on since we got all this information. And let's go to the web browser real quick because I want to mention this. So going back over here, we're on Upload VR. There is this story right here. HTC Vive Cosmos supports optical finger tracking. And this, I'm excited about this, guys. And here's why I'm excited about this. So yesterday, we saw a bunch of the trailers for the Vive Cosmos. There was like 3 different trailers that came out. And I noticed in some of these trailers that there were people in the trailer that didn't have any controllers, and they were acting like they were doing things. And I just kind of barely noticed that, and I was like, huh. And then today I see this report, and it's saying HTC Vive Cosmos supports optical finger tracking. The Vive Cosmos will support the same finger tracking SDK as Vive and Vive Pro. It does have all those cameras in there. It's got a lot of cameras. It's got 6 of them, right? So this is a good thing, because one of the things that I've argued for, and Lincoln, I'm curious to your feelings about this, but I've made this argument that we eventually need to get to a point with VR headsets where somebody could pick up a headset, they can put it onto their head, and they can do something immediately in VR. They don't even have to look for the controllers. Now, us as game players, we want controllers because we want to play real games. But wouldn't it be nice if, like, you're giving the headset to your mom or your uncle or your brother-in-law or whatever, you're giving them a demo, and they don't know a damn thing about video games, but they can point their finger around and maybe interact with something. And I feel like we need to get to this era where from day one, you pick up the headset and it tracks your fingers. Now, I don't know that this is actually going to be the case with the Vive Cosmos. It's saying it supports it, but I don't know that we're going to have it immediately. One thing I will say, though, is I could bet your bottom dollar when we get to the Oculus Quest 2, I bet you any amount of money out there that when you grab an Oculus Quest 2 and you put it on your head, even if you don't have controllers, bam, your hands are going to be right in there, and you could go into Netflix, Amazon, or you could do like a little interactive experience, and you don't even need a freaking controller. But obviously us gamers are going to grab our controllers. Lincoln, what do you think about this idea of hand tracking?
VR is moving far enough along that it's going to happen eventually. I think we're going to reach a stage, maybe say 10 years from now, that there won't be any VR headsets, that any form of reality is going to be done through glasses. And I've said this to people before in my podcast, that that because of the technological advances, VR is not going to die. Every year, VR is center stage on these electronic shows. So, and each year they want to show us how far we're moving along with AR, VR, MR. So there's no question that sooner or later we're going to reach a point where there isn't going to be any controllers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still want controllers, but I want it to work without a controller too, for the the grandmas out there, the grandmas out there, there's too many buttons. They don't know what to do with it. And if they can just see their hands immediately, and they can point their finger at something, so a menu pops up on the screen. They could do Google Earth. They can see where their house is, or they can go to where the Eiffel Tower is, and they can point their finger, and then they teleport over there. There's things these VR headsets, I think, need to be able to do right now to make them more consumer friendly, because I talk about friction. And so, like, you grab a headset and then it's like, I don't have my controllers. I need to go get my controllers. Now, luckily with the Oculus Quest, they got the pass-through capability, so you can actually have the headset on your head and you can go find your controllers with a little black and white mode. And so we're getting better, baby steps. But the one nice thing I will say, though, when it comes to the Vive Cosmos, if it is able to do hand tracking right away from the very beginning, that is a nice bonus. So I'm kind of encouraged by that. Okay, let's see. What else did we want to get into? One other last story real quick before we move on is I just wanted to mention there's a lot of different games. Going back to the webinar real quick, Dreadhalls is going to be coming to Oculus Quest next month. It is coming on October 3rd, and it's going to be $10, and it's full cross-buy support. So if you've already got it on the Oculus Rift, you are good. And this is developed by White Door Games. I'm a fan. I like Dreadhalls. I've been a fan of this game for a while. I think it would work great on Quest. This is the other name I have for this game is it could have been called Run Like Hell or Run Like a Mofo, because basically you're going through these dark hallways, you turn a corner, something weird pops out of nowhere, and you basically want to take off running in the other direction. That's pretty much what Dreadhalls is all about. But it's fun. And $10, decent price. Eventually, I think we got to have even better prices on some of these Quest games. Lincoln, what do you think about the Quest? Because so far in the early life of the Quest, most of the games are $15, and then they go up from there. Are you a little bit disappointed that it doesn't have some of the stuff like on the Oculus Go where you'd have a game for $3.99 and $5.99 and $6.99? Some of these more bite-sized games, it seems Oculus is really trying to curate things very, very specifically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's some games out there that I think are a little bit pricey on the Oculus Quest, but I think with the HTC Cosmos coming out, um, hopefully, I don't know what the situation is going to be if any of the games that's available for the Cosmos is going to be on Steam. If that be the case, I think you'll see a lot of $3, $4, $5 games there, and maybe that'll put the pressure on Oculus to lower the price of some of these games real quick.
Well, they did it with the Oculus Go, and I maybe because the Oculus Go is just this like $3 $200 thing, and it's just got the one little controller, so they're thinking it should have a lot of little cheapo things, and then the Quest is more of real deal, like you got your 6 DoF and everything, and they're trying to start off at a higher level. I think eventually, like once we've had an entire, not even a year, but once we get through this year, we get into next year. I think we'll start seeing a few cheaper games come onto the Quest, but I think they're kind of trying to have a bare minimum here. But Dread Halls is a solid game. I'm looking forward to it, so we'll definitely look forward to that. You know what? I think, why don't we go ahead and give away let's give away the code for Killing Floor Incursion. Okay, so guys, here's how we do it. In terms of giveaways, I like to do basically these trivia. I like to do a trivia when giving away the key. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flash on the screen. It's going to have the game. It's going to have the code for the Steam game, but it's not going to have the last letter. The last letter is going to be missing. And then I'm going to ask a question, and the answer to that question, that first letter of whatever the answer is the missing letter. Now, this question's going to be a little bit harder than normal. Some people might get a little pissed off here because it might lock them out of their Steam account if they try to guess too many times. But so I'm going to give just a little bit more information before I switch to this. Okay, so this game the game that is the answer to the question, this is a hidden gem. I've talked about it before, but I'm kind of on an island. Like, I like it, but it doesn't seem like anybody else really does. I think it's a good game. It's it's kind of a hidden gem, undiscovered game, underrated in my opinion. Small developer in indie game. Came out a while ago. This game's been out for a while. So I'll just give that information, and now let's go ahead and do the trivia. And hopefully not too many people will get locked out of their accounts. So here we go. Let me go ahead and grab it. This is for Killing Floor Incursion. And this is courtesy of Paolo Triani. He donated it to us to give away. So much love to Paolo for that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here it is. This is the question. The question is, this VR shooter features robotic enemies and arm-swinging locomotion. Roller skate through the levels with the greatest of ease. Okay, so it's underrated. It's a hidden gem. I like it, but almost nobody else does. And I'll give you one more clue. The developer is Game Cooks. The developer is Game Cooks. I think they're based in Beirut. The developer is Game Cooks. And so this is for Killing Floor Incursion. The code is A3RJJ 5ZZIQ NW26. And then what is this game that I'm talking about? It's a VR shooter. There's robotic enemies. You use arm swinging to roller skate through the levels with the greatest of ease. That's what I always said. Like, you're roller skating through the levels and bam, 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 shooting these robotic enemies. The developer is Game Cooks. Has anybody got the code yet? Yeah, Kevgret says that could be one of 1,000 games. I know. Okay, I said Game Cooks. Okay, so do a Google search for Game Cooks and VR. Yeah, this is way too much of an inside baseball. Vindicta, there we go. The VR man got it. Vindicta, yeah. So I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about. This game actually is an underrated game. I really like it. I'm going to show you real quick. It's called Vindicta. Okay, so I'll go over here to the Steam page. So let's go back to the webinar. Okay, yeah, so this game right here, Vindicta by Game Cooks. So the first letter was V for that code there. And this has mixed reviews. It's, it's robots. You're just basically running through these levels. It's very simple. It's kind of cartoony-ish graphics. But I felt like the gameplay was just fast and fun, and it worked great. And I actually did use the arm swinging thing in this game. I'm not really into arm swinging when it comes to any of these VR games. I'd rather just use like regular go anywhere locomotion with a thumbstick. But in this game, I was actually doing it. And I'm telling you, man, you roller skate through this thing with the greatest of ease. You pull out your gun and bam, 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 you're shooting all these like robotic enemies that are all over the place. You're infiltrating this place. It is called Vindicta. It's $15. But anyway, that is a hidden gem in my opinion. Okay, so we're going to go back over here. That was the game code that I did want to give away. Alrighty, so that pretty much takes care of all of the major things I wanted to do before we get into our origin story with Lincoln Klay. You know, it's funny, the name Lincoln Klay, when I think of that name, no, it makes me think of like a movie, like the name of somebody that's in a movie, Like, do you remember that movie, Face Off? The guy was named Castor Troy, Castor Troy. Lincoln Klay. I don't know. Lincoln Klay sounds like the main action guy in a movie or something. But let's see here. Okay, so what we can do. What trailer did I grab? Hold on. I grabbed some weird Beat Saber thing. Let me get it on something good. Get off of this. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and let's do a little bit of some interview action here. Origin story. We've got Lincoln Klay in the building. And one of the things that I like to do when I got a brand new guest and I don't really know the past history is I want to go back before VR. So let's go back to 2013 or 2014. VR was probably a long distance off in the twilight. I don't know. There was some Oculus stuff going on. Did you even hear about any of that? And what games were you playing at the time? Or what systems were you, or were you even gaming back in 2013, 2014?
Oh yeah, I've been gaming since I was 10 years old. And I'm 52 years old, so that's a lot of gaming. But I think 2014. The PlayStation 4 was a year old, so that's where I was doing most of my gaming. I was aware of VR, but I knew it was very, very expensive, so it never even entered my mind because I knew how expensive gaming PCs were, and I knew that VR headsets were pretty expensive, $800, what have you. But I wasn't interested in VR at the time. I'd probably say at the time, maybe Killzone, I think Shadowfall. That was a game I was playing a lot of. MLB The Show, because I'm a huge baseball fan. I think I was playing that. So pretty much a lot of the PlayStation exclusives is what I was playing at the time.
Okay, have you mostly been a Sony guy? Like if you had to be from one of the camps or the other, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, were you mostly a Sony guy, you'd say?
This generation, yes, absolutely. The previous generation, I liked both. I thought the PS3 was a better system, but I felt like the party chat that the 360 had gave it a little bit of an advantage in terms of multiplayer and playing games with your friends. But I'd probably say one of my favorite consoles of all time would have to be the Sega Dreamcast. It's really unfortunate the way that ended, but I thought that console was ahead of its time.
Oh yeah, I think I actually talked about the Dreamcast. Was that in yesterday's episode, or it was a very recent episode? I was talking about the Dreamcast for some weird reason, and yeah, I actually got lucky enough. I went to E3 the year that the Dreamcast was going to come out, and I got to go to Los Angeles. This was like 1999, and it was like in May or June. And in Los Angeles, and Sega had this big booth, and it was Dreamcast, and all the games were there, and it looked so good. And I was like a computer guy at the time, And I was like, you know what? I can buy this Dreamcast and I don't have to worry about upgrading my computer anymore. And these games look just as good as all the computer games. So yeah, I really love the Dreamcast. Okay, so you were mostly a Sony guy with the PlayStation 4. You had a PlayStation 4. So when you started thinking about VR, you probably started thinking, like when you heard about Project Morpheus and you started knowing that Sony was going to have this thing that was coming along, you probably started thinking, maybe I'll jump on that bandwagon. Now, PlayStation VR, I believe it arrived like October of 2016. Did you
Correct.
get one right away, or did you come in a little bit later? When did you grab your PlayStation VR?
I bought it day one, but I didn't buy it for me. I bought it for my son. Um, if you remember, leading up to the release of the PlayStation VR, there were demos at like Best Buy, and my son was asking me to take him to Best Buy every Saturday so he could play the PlayStation VR. I tried it a couple of times, but I wasn't interested in it. How I ended up getting into it was I gave it to my son for Christmas. He wasn't using it. So my first thought was I was going to sell it, but then I'm thinking, I don't want $500 to go to waste, so let me give it a try. So I started playing some games, dealt with some motion sickness that nearly caused me to put it up for sale until I found out that you can take drink things like ginger ale to alleviate the motion sickness. And so once I conquered that, I realized the potential of VR, and I said, once we get first person shooter games, that's when I'm gonna like really really dive in to VR. So I would probably say Farpoint was the game that made me say I'm here to stay.
Yeah, but that took Farpoint. Yeah, Farpoint. Yeah, let me grab a trailer for Farpoint. That is such a beautiful goddamn game. And the thing about Farpoint too is like you have a Rift now, so this is a game, especially if I don't know if you have the gun, but the gun really goes with it nicely. So if you've got the gun and you're in a headset with this game, I'm telling you, there's PCV, like when you're on it looks like Mars and everything, and even like these cinemas where these people are doing this like acting and dialogue and they're like standing like right in front of you and their bodies are like occupying space and you feel like you got to step back a little bit because their shoulders and like all the high quality aspects of that. I think this compares with some of the best PC VR games we've got. Like, they can be snobby about the resolution and stuff, but this is a powerful game, right?
Yeah, no question. Not only was it a great story, but I thought it was one of the best looking VR games at the time.
Yeah, yeah. And with the gun, and then what about, were you concerned at all with VR in terms of like getting scared in VR? Because these are like spiders and monsters and things. Before I ever had VR, I kind of wondered, like, I didn't know, like, how real is this going to be? Am I going to get too freaked out by it? I mean, it's not a big deal at all now, but I remember back then I wasn't so sure about it.
You know, horror games, that's the one genre where VR is just too real. And it's embarrassing to admit it, but I do not play horror games because they scare me. Resident Evil was terrifying. Um, and I think I was going to start playing The Inpatient, but I didn't because I heard that was scary too. Um, but I did like using Resident Evil and other horror games. I did like using that to scare my guests whenever someone would come over and I'd say, try this. And I'd have Ocean Depth. I believe that's the game that was on PlayStation Worlds
Oh,
with the
yeah,
shark
yeah,
cage.
yeah.
I would definitely use that to scare people. I had a friend when that shark ripped that door open, she jumped up on the couch and nearly ripped VR right out of the console.
Oh man, yeah, that can happen. Yeah, that the Shark Tank. So PlayStation VR Worlds, like just going back to that for a second, people got to know, buy this. Like if you have a PlayStation VR, and because this, you'll find this for like $5.99, $6.99. Like it'll be $7, $5, $6, $8. This goes on sale a lot. And so pay attention, and if you got a PlayStation VR, grab it. Now, VR Luge is a dud. Don't worry about that. But basically, all the other little mini games, like even Danger Ball, is kind of cool. And then, of course, the London Heist. Like, remember when you were on the freeway for the very first time and you were in that like delivery truck with that guy and he hands you a gun and the motorcycle's coming up? I mean, you feel like you're in a legit action movie. Don't you think this is one of the more underrated games? And a lot of people don't give much love to this game.
Without question. And I think that highway scene, as you speak of, was amazing. And I was having some fun, and I was waving the gun around inside the van, and I even pointed it at the driver, and he knocked my hand out of the way. And I said, "That's like this is amazing." And my belief was that I felt like the one thing that's not making PlayStation VR catch on the way it should was the price when it launched. Even though it was the cheapest out of the major headsets, $500 was still a lot. And I thought that was a negative for a peripheral to cost more than the console itself. I felt like if the console was going to be $400, it might be a little more enticing if the headset is $300. So I still say it was the price that made it get off to a slow start. And I even think Sony's slow start into VR, I think that might be what made Microsoft back out.
Yeah, what do you think about, like, though, in terms of what they ultimately delivered, it does seem really expensive. And on top of the fact that, they're using kind of a crappy little camera thing, and like the Move controllers weren't really designed for VR. It's almost like they cobbled a bunch of stuff together. You got a million wires all over the place too. Did you feel though like that PlayStation VR was nice and comfortable in terms of the halo and how it would slide on your head and all of that? I mean, at least they did pretty good job with all of that.
Oh yeah, it was definitely comfortable. So in the beginning, motion sickness was the only thing that I had to deal with. And again, once I overcame that, I was basically like, bring on the first person shooter games. I felt like once we get first person shooter games, we're going to reach a point where a lot of people are going to be curious about the PlayStation VR. Because I feel like with VR, whatever it is you like to do, why wouldn't you want to do it in VR? If you're a car fanatic and like racing, why wouldn't you want to sit behind the seat of a race car that I'll probably never get to sit behind because I'll never even get close enough to a race car to even see the inside of it. For those who like Call of Duty type games, why wouldn't you want to play something like that in VR? Because with each year with games like Call of Duty Battlefield, people want these games to be more realistic, more immersive, and more interactive, and it doesn't get any more immersive or interactive than VR.
Yeah, there's this guy Bobby Blackwolf that I've interviewed him twice, and he's kind of in like he's not a VR guy, but he likes VR and he's always been interested in VR, but he's a regular type gamer too. But he always makes this argument that like somebody's working as a waiter or something, they're on their feet all day long. They get off work, they're coming home, and see their normal routine is they plop down on the sofa, they got their Xbox controller, and they got a big giant TV over there, and they play Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever it is, Destiny, Fortnite, whatever, and they just plop onto their sofa, and that's their thing. And he's saying that some people aren't going to want to be standing up and like, holding a gun and like really getting into VR. What do you think about that?
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, because it was hard to argue with that because I saw that interview, and it was kind of hard to argue with that answer. But with me, video games are my passion, and it's my escape. So while I'm at work, I'm sitting here thinking about what am I going to play when I get home. And when it comes to VR, some games are meant for you to sit down, some games are meant for you to stand up. And when it comes to first person shooter games, I wouldn't want to play it sitting down.
Yeah,
And
I
I
definitely wouldn't either. So this game right here, like you're talking about shooters, did you get into Firewall when that came out and were you using the gun and everything?
Oh yeah, because I bought that bundle, the Farpoint bundle that came with the aim controller. So once I knew that games like Bravo Team when Alvo was supposed to come, Special Forces VR, Firewall. There was supposed to be several first-person shooter games on the horizon, and I couldn't wait to use the aim controller in those games. So when the night that Firewall unlocked, I bought that game, and I think I did like a 4 hour podcast leading up to the midnight release of it. And then once it unlocked at midnight, I think I stayed up till about 3, 4 in the morning, and I had to be at work at 6.
Yeah, okay, hold on. I want to talk more about this game really quick, but before I forget, I want to go back to the motion sick thing. So, are you at a point now where you can pretty much play anything, or do you still sometimes get this motion sickness cropping up?
It happens once in a while, but like I probably say it in the beginning, Riggs was the worst as
Oh,
far as
yeah.
giving me motion sickness, and I still can't do it right now. Um, the motion sickness wouldn't be as bad as it was in the beginning, uh, but it's still it's a little bit of it still there. I don't know if this was something with me needing to get my VR legs under me, or if this was something that at the beginning of this VR generation, that's how games were coming out. I just don't know.
Yeah, because see, I kind of feel like a lot of people when they get into VR, they don't have their VR legs, and also a lot of people that you put them into VR first time, sometimes they're already apprehensive before like they're already expecting the worst. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to get all dizzy and everything." And then there's a little bit of a psych out factor that kind of comes along with it as well. But I've always felt like once somebody plays enough VR and they get used to it, they're pretty much going to adapt and they're going to be able to play most VR games. But that's not always true. So when you're playing Rift games and it's just like using the thumbstick to move around, thumbstick based locomotion, are you okay doing that? Like, do you have like, are you able to play most of those games fine?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer full locomotion versus teleportation. I think teleportation breaks the immersion a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
What
would prefer
about
to be able to move around freely.
I was going to ask a quest question, but no, let's go back to this game here. The really cool thing, like the thing that this game does, I think, better than most other VR shooters that I've ever played. Like I still think they're the best in two particular categories. Number one, the audio. I think the audio in this game is free. They should win a goddamn Emmy. The audio is good. The 3D audio. Like you hear things happening out there that really sound good. So I give First Contact Entertainment much love for that audio design. The other thing that I think they really killed it on is like the walls and the accoutrements, like just there's something about it. It makes you feel like you're in there, like you feel like you're really there. Like when you're in the hotel and stuff. Just I don't know what it is about their walls and everything. They just did a damn good job. There's something about it. What else do you like? What about this game though? Didn't it have like a really rocky road where there was all these problems with like the servers and people could never get into a game and everything? Did you experience all of that nightmare that was going on for a while?
Without a question, and that's still a huge complaint to this very day with gamers wanting a host migration and a dedicated servers. I don't, I don't think we're going to get dedicated servers, but I would still like to see them give us host migration because every time the host leaves the match, the entire room shuts down. So that can be annoying.
Yeah, talking about PlayStation VR in general, let me see. I'll grab another trailer real quick. I'm curious to what you think about because you started out with PlayStation VR, and I imagine you start out with PlayStation VR. You probably have a little bit of a I mean, you know PlayStation VR. That's how you came in, and so you got used to PlayStation VR, and you kind of want to give it the benefit of the doubt in a certain way. This is actually a brand new trailer that recently came out for Gran Turismo Sport. It's this new Porsche that was added to it. I don't know if it's in the VR mode at all, but pretty cool looking trailer. But what do you think about like the Move controllers, the camera, and all of that? Do you feel like Sony kind of just cobbled this thing together and it's kind of just barely good enough? Or do you feel like somebody could have a PlayStation VR, have nothing else, and they could be pretty damn well entertained.
I was okay with the move controllers, the camera, all that stuff because it was my first dip into VR. So I didn't know enough about it to have anything to complain about. But as far as the move controllers go, I did eventually run into some games where I thought it would be nice if these move controllers had thumbsticks.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And that's the
even
number
moving
one
into
thing.
next generation, even if they were to stick with these dinosaur move controllers, as long as they were to put thumbsticks on it, I would be okay with it.
I think the problem with that though is like it's any type of accessory that comes later, you're like chopping your market, and there's all these people that don't have it. And then like I feel like they can't do that. Like you go to the PlayStation VR subreddit and there's always a post from somebody that says, "Why doesn't Sony just come out with new controllers for the PlayStation VR that we have right now?" But I feel like they just have to wait for the next one. They just have to wait. Like I know it sucks, but I think they gotta wait for the next one because if they try to come in halfway, and try to come out with a new control, it's still going to use the big light bulbs. So I mean, it's not like they're going to give you a new camera and everything. And if they did give you a new camera, like what about the head? So they got to use everything that's already there. So if they come out with new controllers, it's still going to have the big giant light bulbs. They could add thumbsticks to it, but now developers got to think, okay, well, half of the audience, and not even half because it would be this new thing that people got to buy. So they'd be like, well, a portion of the audience has these brand new controllers, but most people have the old ones. And, I don't know. I just feel like they kind of just have to wait for PlayStation VR 2. Now, the popular theory is, excuse me, the popular theory is next November, PlayStation 5 is going to be available for all of us to buy if we decide to buy it. Will PlayStation VR 2 also arrive then, or do you think they're going to wait like an additional year because it's like too much money all at one time? That's what I kind of think, but what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Myself, I would like it to come out day one. Uh, the PS5 is definitely a day one purchase for me, as well as PlayStation VR 2. And I'm prepared to pay as much as 1,100 bucks for the headset as well as the console. That would be under the belief that the console may possibly be 600 bucks and the headset would be 500 bucks, which I don't know if that'd be a smart move, but I'm still prepared to pay it.
So you see that here's the weird thing, man, and I've talked about this before, and I know I'm kind of an oddball when it comes to this, but like the PlayStation 5, so that's coming next November, and they're gonna want to try to really sell that, right? And like I got a PlayStation VR, I'm a fan of this stuff, and when it comes to Sony, they've got some great developers. They just bought Insomniac, by the way. So I mean they've got stuff, although we need to talk about don't they need some more stuff this year, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But it's like, what incentive do I have to buy a PlayStation 5 because I don't play any flat games at all? So if I'm buying a PlayStation 5, I'm only buying it for PlayStation VR, but there isn't even a PlayStation VR 2 yet. And what are they going to have on play? Are they going to, like, is it going to be, okay, so PlayStation 5 comes out. Is there going to be a game that comes out that day that is called Uncharted VR and you've got to have a PlayStation 5 and you use it with the old PlayStation VR headset and it's like and it looks really good. It's amazing because it's using the power of PlayStation 5. It's got to be watered down a little bit to get into the headset, but it would work. Is that going to be incentive for me to pay 500 bucks to go buy a console? See, I'm weird because I don't play flat games. Do you still play flat? And what do you think about like why pay all that money? Why not just get a Valve Index or something?
You're exactly right. I don't play flat games anymore. I bought Spider-Man. I really wanted it. Didn't finish it because I got too wrapped up in VR. It took me 3 months to finish God of War. And yes, you're right. VR is strictly the reason why I want the PlayStation 5. And I would like to think that with the power that the PlayStation 5 is going to have, developers are only going to be limited by whether they think there's going to be a market for whatever game they might want to publish. And my ultimate hope is that we can have games like MLB The Show fully playable in VR, a Madden type game fully playable in VR, a NBA 2K fully playable in VR. I mean, we're already there right now with the racing games, and that's one of the biggest things I'm really looking forward to next generation is to play games like GT Sport and hopefully get that VR multiplayer because I think that's the only thing wrong with the current GT Sport right now. So I definitely expect PlayStation 5 to take us that we won't be held down by the limitations of the current VR and the current hardware right now. So, but yes, VR is strictly the reason, like 95% of the reason why I'm even remotely interested in the PlayStation 5. And also, I would hope that the PlayStation 5 will have enough power to be in the general ballpark of PCs. So when a developer develops a game, we don't have to wait a year or two later for them to find a way to water it down for the PlayStation format. I'd like to hope that they can release it on both formats, PC and PlayStation VR at the same time.
Yeah, and that really could happen because of the fact that PlayStation 5 is going to be this one thing. You know what I mean? It's just like the Oculus Quest. Like red matter on the Oculus Quest looks effing ridiculous, and it shouldn't be humanly possible to have a game look that good on a Snapdragon 835 and to make it work like that. But they're able to do it because they know exactly what everybody has. They know exactly how much memory everybody has. They know exactly what kind of GPU everybody has. So they're able to really dial it in. And with PlayStation 5, I think you will get really good PC ports for a while there where they'll be slightly watered down, but they'll work great. But one thing I want to go back to, because you mentioned a number of sports games, and I haven't really had an opportunity to talk to another sports guy because here's the thing. When I got into video games way back in the days, this is going way back to Sega Genesis and stuff like that, I was a sports guy. I played Madden, I played NBA Live, I played FIFA soccer, I played NHL hockey. I was a sports guy. And so as I continue, I would also play Castlevania and, all these other games as well. But like, I was really a sports guy and I would kind of play these other games just for the hell of it. And then eventually I started to get way more into those other games but was still playing sports games. But over the last several years, like the sports games that are on like Xbox One and PlayStation and stuff, like they all seem like just the same old crap. It's higher resolution, it looks better, but like I've complained about Madden, like it's the same old engine that they've been using for a million years. So now we have VR and they can do first person stuff. Or they could also do sports. One of the arguments I've made is what about do the sports in such a way where imagine that you're King Kong or you're Godzilla and this football game is happening and you sit down right by the field. You're like this big, gigantic thing. You're sitting down right by the field. You're holding your Xbox controller, and all the little players are running around, but you're right there. You can look at them. We could do VR games like that as well, like almost like a tabletop thing where like Madden could be right up here and you could see the little guys running around. You could see the ball go zzz and go down like that. We could do that with AR too, like on a coffee table, like Magic Leap. What's up? No. But
yeah, something similar to those old football games where you flip the switch and it starts vibrating and all the characters start moving around. That would be a modern day version of that.
yeah, I mean, so there's this game called Brass Tactics, right, on Oculus. It's this first-person strategy. I mean, it's a real-time strategy game. Like these little armies are battling each other, right? And you can take the table and you can raise it up, you can lower it down, you can grab it and pull it. And so you could kind of do that with like a football game or a soccer game or something where it's happening out in front of you and you're looking at and you're seeing your players animate. You're seeing them like doing bicycle kicks or jumping up. Basketball would work really good because basketball, the court is relatively small, all things considered. So you could zoom more in on it and you could watch your little characters. You could see people on the sideline, like on the, around the perimeter of the court and all of that, the cheerleaders and everything. But we haven't seen any of this, man. what is the best sports game in VR? Like 2MD football, this is what I'm playing right now, which to be fair is not like a legitimate football game. Like we don't have like legitimate sports games in VR to this day. What
VR Sports Challenge is a good one. I've done a few streams on that, and there's several modes on VR Sports Challenge. You have football, basketball, hockey, and home run derby. And the football aspect of VR Sport Challenge is proof that it can be done right now. That a fully playable football game can be done in VR because there's drills in this game where you march your team down the field to score a touchdown. You throw the ball, you're the quarterback, you throw the ball. Once you release the ball, you become the receiver where you can catch the ball. There's some of the drills, one of them I haven't gotten to yet, and that's the run after the catch. And that right there was the icing on the cake that proves that a fully playable football game can be done in VR right now. It doesn't have to be Madden. It could, be the Phoenix, turkeys or something. It doesn't matter what it is, but it can be done. And I'm hoping that someone will do it.
What about Oculus? They had $250 million that they were throwing around to everybody. They were giving all this money out. Don't you think maybe it would have been wise for them to take, just say, I don't know, 20 million of it and contact Visual Concepts, the developers of like NBA 2K, and say, look, here's $20 million. We need an incredible VR basketball game. Because now I know a lot of people in chat are like, I don't play sports games. I don't care about sports games. That would be a waste of money. That'd be a terribly, terribly horrible waste of money. But I remember back in the old days, you had to have some good sports games or you were not going to get a certain kind of clientele. They would just never look at your stuff if you don't got a legitimate sports game. And VR right now, like we got ping pong games. Okay, we've got some ping pong games. I don't know what, like soccer, there was one attempt at soccer. There was this game called, they changed the name like 4 different times. I don't know if you ever played it, but goddamn, what was it called? I don't even remember the name of it now. But there is a soccer game, and they actually have an experimental mode for the PC version where it's 360 degrees. And so you could really play soccer. Like if you had a wireless headset, it would work. And they need to bring that shit out on the Oculus Quest because it would work on a wireless headset. Ah, man, what was the name of that game? Because I probably have a trailer for it. Let me see if I can find it. It was, it changed its name a whole bunch of times. Let's see.
I think there's several soccer games in VR right now on Steam.
Yeah. I don't remember what the name VRFC. I think it was called VRFC. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so they changed the name like a million freaking times. Like literally, not a million, but they did change it like 3 times. Seriously. So this game is called VRFC. It was Virtual Reality Football Club, and it was made by this developer called Cherry Pop. And so this game, it's now, the name is changed, and it's on PlayStation VR, it's on Rift, it's on Steam, and it's a legit soccer, kind of legit. It's like 3-on-3 or 2-on-2 or so. Yeah, 3-on-3, I think is what it is. And they do have an experimental mode in this game. If you have the PC VR version, you can put on this experimental mode where it's 360, like if you had Vive wireless adapter or something, or if you had one of those wireless things for your PC VR headset, you could probably have a freaking blast. But I put this in the experimental mode. I was using a regular CV1, and I damn near yanked my PC right off of the table because I was like, whoa, I turned around real fast, and you've got to have wireless, and I did not have wireless. But yeah, we don't really have sports in VR. It's kind of lame. Now, you're talking about VR Sports Challenge, and you're saying that it can be done. Now, the one argument I would make with you there is I think what we could have is we could have the Peyton Manning VR simulator. You know what I mean? Like you could do a quarterback. You could do a quarterback. But see, when the quarterback passes the ball and then it goes to the wide receiver, the only thing you could really do is like, oh, catch it. Okay, now I'm running. Maybe you could stiff arm, but honestly, I think it should really just be that, it should be a quarterback simulator. Make an awesome ass quarterback simulator. Maybe you could be middle linebacker on defense or something, but that's pretty, but I don't know that you can do everything. And then I'm not sure how it would work with like head to head and all of that. But I think the tabletop idea, that would be a cheaper way to do it. I think it's a faster way to do it. For example, Electronic Arts right now, do you think it would be that hard for them to create some kind of virtual tabletop for the Madden that exists right now? All it is a matter of dropping the camera angle so you're kind of hovering over it and having a scale ability. They could do it right now. For $5 million, they could figure out how to make a tabletop Madden that is just exactly the Madden. They could do the same thing with FIFA. They could do the same thing with if they had an NBA. Is EA still trying to do NBA games? They had NBA Live for a minute, but they've tried back and forth, right?
I don't know, but there's no question that I think EA could do the tabletop thing that you're talking about, but we all know what drives EA. And boy,
yeah.
I guess
well, Facebook, get that money, throw it out there.
Yeah, I think that's the only way they would do it, is somebody would have to fund it, because for it to come out of their own pockets, they would have to see something special, or I think it would be a situation where I think when VR takes the world by storm, I think that's when EA will jump in it a little bit more. Right now, Bethesda obviously sees something in VR. They're double dipping, but they're definitely involved in it. You have games like Skyrim, Fallout 4. These are all games that they sold once for $60 and then resold them for $60 again once they came to VR. And so there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to continue to be invested in VR. And I think next generation, I think the current Fallout 76 is going to come to VR next generation, because I think with the power of the PS5, they won't have to hold back or water it down. But as far as EA goes, yeah, they'd have to see a ton of money coming their way. We're talking like microtransactions type money for them to want to get on board with it.
Yeah, the problem with, VR, here's the reality. VR, as much as we love it, and VR is a runaway train. There's no stopping it. Everybody's going to be playing VR. No one's going to be able to get away from this. It's just a matter of when. But it's going to happen. Like, that is not even a question in my mind. But the problem is, right now, we're a niche of a niche. We're a tiny little market, and we're just not big enough for Electronic Arts to ever even think about us. And then the problem is the basketball game, like NBA 2K, that is Take-Two Interactive, and they don't really like VR either. Like, they've done LA Noire, the VR case files. That's the one, they did do that. Like, they dipped their toes in the water with that, Rockstar, right? But it's unfortunate because all the best sports games are owned by companies that kind of are anti-VR at this point. But there's another great sports game, and here it is. It's on the screen right now. And Sony, what is your problem, Sony? Where is...
Right.
Because couldn't this be done in VR? Because here's what I could imagine. Okay, so you could be a pitcher in VR. You can be a batter in VR. You could be a third baseman or a first baseman in VR. Now, being a shortstop or a second baseman, probably not a good idea. But you could definitely play first base or third base, and you could play pitcher, and you could be a catcher, and you could be a batter. So where the hell is MLB VR? This is Sony. It's their studio. You're telling me this studio that is in San Diego, that they wouldn't want to try something new and make a bomb-ass VR game with first-person graphics and all of that?
I think they want to do it, but I think they can't because of the limitations of the PS4. I know that question was posed to them once the PlayStation VR first released. They were asked if there was any chance of this coming to PlayStation VR, and they said they're exploring all options. So I would be led to believe that the reason why we don't have it now is because it would probably be a broken mess, or it'd be super blurry. But I'd like to think next generation they're going to implement some sort of VR into MLB The Show.
Well, that's actually a good idea. Imagine this. What if, because like we've been crying, like people have been crying about this. We're not the only ones. Like if you go to the PlayStation VR subreddit, every time we get around the time of year when this game comes out, people are like, wait, why isn't there like a home run derby in VR? Well, why isn't there like, throw us a bone, Sony? Like people are always saying that. And maybe, just maybe, that studio is working on VR, but they're taking they're taking a long develop, like they're not going to just try to whip up some rando game. Like they're really trying to figure it out and do it proper. And maybe there will be an MLB The Show for PlayStation VR 2. Like this could be a launch game for PlayStation VR 2, and we might get a dream sports game in VR where it really looks good, really feels good. And you like imagine, I mean, stepping up to the plate, in Yankee Stadium, and you're looking around, it's nighttime and the cameras are flashing, bases loaded and shit. Or they could put you in all kinds of different scenarios where you're like, the Dodgers, what was his name? Kirk Gibson or whatever, when he got up when he had a broken leg and he hit the grand slam. They put you in the different World Series scenarios. So we got to hope that something like this is happening because, yeah, we do not have good sports right now. Okay, well, we've been going on for quite some time, Lincoln. Do you still got some time left, or do you need to bounce out of
Oh,
here?
absolutely. It's Friday night. I don't have to work tomorrow.
Okay, I still got to get something to eat pretty soon, so I can't go forever, but we can go for a little bit longer here. So one thing I did want to ask you, so you said you bought an Oculus Quest, but it's really pretty much for your son. And I'm guessing that you've been able to grab it a few times here, though, and jump into it yourself and take a go at it. What do you think, like if I were to ask you, let's say there's a friend that you got, right? They don't have a PlayStation 4 at all. And they're like, you know what? I kind of want to see what VR is all about, but I don't want to spend a lot of money. Now, you could tell this friend, you could say, hey, well, you can go to your local Craigslist. You could probably get a used PlayStation 4 for $150. You could get a used PlayStation VR for $150. And so for 300, now it's kind of jumping over a lot of hoops because you got to go to Craigslist, you got to find somebody that has the deal and all of that. But you could go that route, or you could buy everything brand new. Now your price would be kind of going pretty high up there if you're getting a PlayStation 4 brand new and you're getting a base level PSVR brand new. I'm not sure exactly how much all that costs. And then the other option is just you pay $400, you get yourself an Oculus Quest. How would you compare these two? Because I feel like the Quest, way better tracking, way better controllers, wireless out of the box. PlayStation VR does have more capabilities, though. You can play No Man's Sky. You ain't playing No Man's Sky on the Quest. How do you contrast and compare these babies?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I've been doing my part to try to push VR. And a lot of people that I talk to when I mentioned the PlayStation VR about that being an affordable starter kit, so to speak, for VR, a lot of them make the same excuses that they're waiting for it to become wireless and that sort of thing. And then I'll mention the Oculus Quest to them. So a lot of people that I've been trying to push this off on, a lot of them are not that serious about it. But
why do you think that is? Wait, let's back up. What is it? Is it just, have they ever tried it anywhere, or they're not even tripping on trying it?
That's hard to say because the people who have made excuses, they either play one certain type of game and that's it, nothing else, or they just don't play video games that much at all.
Okay, so you're talking about the Fortnite, Destiny, Call of Duty, Battlefield, like they've got one main game, maybe Madden or something. They play one major game. And so that game ain't in VR yet, so they're not tripping. And then there's people that aren't really gamers. But the one thing that VR does, maybe, see, this is where the Oculus Quest needs to get more of this stuff. Have you screwed around with like the experiences that you can have, the non-gaming stuff that is available on like Oculus Rift, like all the little, they have all these little free things where it's like, cool little animated stories and stuff. Have you tried any of that stuff?
I've tried to Google Earth, but one of the things that it's on both PC and PlayStation VR. One of the things that I like to mess around with a lot is the next VR. To be able to be on the court watching a basketball game in VR, or to see football highlights in VR, to go on the field with them. I definitely like those experiences.
Yeah, but don't you? So you're talking about like 360, like the 360 videos of like where you see like LeBron like at the free throw line and then he dunks it, or I mean, I've seen some of these samples that they have out there, right? But I feel like those samples need to improve by leaps and bounds before we're like getting your average Joe Blow interested in it.
Yeah, I agree because some of the players look tall and stretched, but they do have packages on, I believe, Next VR where you can purchase a complete NBA game and watch it in VR.
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like so. Here's the thing. What do you call it? It was Intel, right? So Intel's been talking about like this voxel stuff. I think is it voxels or what is it? It's something like that. It's voxels or fractals or something like that, where they created this gigantic sound stage where they're going to film everything with 1 million cameras. Like, I don't know how it all works, but this is like some future shit, right? This is like maybe 7 years away. But supposedly what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to film an NBA game like with all these freaking cameras. And then basically what they do is they can take that entire NBA game and they basically turn everything into a 3D model, and it's all billions of little pixels or voxels or whatever. And so now it's 100% 3D. So you could walk out on like you could freeze it. Like LeBron could be holding the ball up, like it could be like those commercials, where it's like in the Matrix and shit, where you just freeze time. LeBron's holding the ball up here like he's going to pass it to somebody, and you could just walk up to him, look at him, everybody's like in stop motion. Like that's the future of it's going to be incredible, but obviously we're not there. Right now, all we have is this crappy 360 video. I think it's like really low resolution. I think it doesn't look very good. Like I've seen some samples of like soccer games and stuff that have been filmed in VR, and it's like, to me, it's like they're doing more harm than good. Like actually seeing it to me is like, if I were to show that to somebody and they looked at it, they'd look at it and they'd be like, oh shit, VR, I'll check back in 15 years because this needs a lot of work.
Yeah, when they perfect something like that, I will probably never watch a basketball, football, baseball game in flat screen again. I'll probably only watch them in VR.
Yeah, I've always thought about this. Okay, imagine you're watching an NFL game and you can basically be like 7 feet behind, or no, actually, let's say you're like 5 feet behind the running back that's already standing behind the quarterback. And it's like you're just basically, it's almost like you're the equivalent of standing right there on the field. They hike the ball, the quarterback drops back, maybe he drops right through you. You're seeing his reads as like, because there's cameras in the freaking heads in their helmets that are doing all this shit in stereoscopic. And you could basically like see his reads. Yeah, I mean, why would, or you could be on the sideline. You could stand right next to the coach. He's walking along, the guy that is like holding his wires and is giving him some slack. Like you could be standing right next to that guy or next to the referees, next to wherever, and in NBA games, you could be at half court during the freaking NBA finals and like the players are dribbling right by you. Like we're eventually going to get there. And that's why I do feel like VR is this unstoppable runaway train. Like there's nothing you can do to stop it. The Pandora's box has been opened. It's over. This is our dystopian future is coming for that ass. You know what I mean? It is really coming. Like, have you seen any of I don't want to go down this road too much, but like, some of the adult content and stuff that is out there as well. No, because, well, the only reason I want to bring this up is like where we're at right now with that adult content that I'm talking about, right? They do this like 180 stuff which is an improvement because they're getting better with by just doing 180 and not doing the 360. The resolution is better. But I see some of this stuff and I think to myself, in about 6 years, this is going to be photo real. And when this is photo real, it's over. It's basically over. When this is photo real, it is over. This will be so popular. It'll be and hey, it's base level, right? It's base level humanity. Like, it's just going to sell. It is what can you say about that? But that's why I feel like VR is an absolute runaway train. The problem is, so Lincoln Klay, this is the real question of the day right here, is we both know VR is unstoppable, but we also know that this is like the trough of disillusionment, or whatever you want to call it. And we're living in the trough of disillusionment. We're living right here, right now in 2019. People crying. We don't have big AAA games. We get a little AAA game here or there. But it's like we're getting drip fed a lot of this stuff. So do you feel like you're going to be able to, are you willing to just ride the tide of like a lot of indie games, a lot of smaller games, a lot of, like, even Sony isn't getting Naughty Dog to work on a VR game. They're not getting Sucker Punch to work on a VR game. They're getting these small, they're getting London Studio, which is legit, but they're not getting Naughty Dog, So we're in the trough of disillusionment here. How long are you willing to last? Like, there may be another 3 or 4 years with no NBA 2K in VR, no Madden in VR, no FIFA in VR. Are you willing to what do you think about all that?
The first year that the PlayStation VR came out, I think 10 months into the life of the PlayStation VR, at that time they had reported selling 750,000 units, and that was still more than HTC Vive and Oculus combined. So when I saw those numbers, then I was like, okay, I understand why there's no AAA titles out there right now. Because who's going to develop a game for $50-60 million only to, hope that the total 1 million people that's out there might buy it? So that's another reason why we need Sony to hurry up and come on with the PlayStation 5. Because I think when the next generation hits there, I think it's a given that they're going to sell more headsets than all the major headsets combined, more than the Oculus, more than HTC, Valve Index.
More than Quest, though? More than Quest, though?
They might not sell more than Quest, but they will have, it will be a premium experience. Because right now with the Oculus Quest, the wireless gives you convenience, but some of these games look like PS1 graphics. So me, I'm a graphics nut. So
they need a Red Matter demo. You need to check out Red Matter on the Quest.
Yeah, I've seen that. I was definitely curious about that, but I didn't want to spend the money for it.
Yeah, I know. It's not cheap, too cheap.
And that's also why we need Microsoft to get on board with this. I'm hoping that Microsoft and Oculus makes that partnership happen next generation to get Oculus onto the Scarlet. So
I don't buy that. I don't buy that, man. I don't know. Like, why would that is it's a weird rumor to me. Like, I don't like, okay, so we just said that VR is a runaway train, right? Like, this is happening, and AR as well. AR is going to be a thing as well, and it's going to be VR and AR, and it's just going to depend on what you want to do, and so we can all agree on that. But Microsoft, like, don't you think Microsoft wants this prize? Facebook wants this prize. Why would these two giant behemoths? Like, why would they be like, yeah, we'll hook you up with a little headset for your Scarlet? Whose store are we going to? Are you going to the Oculus store? And then why would Xbox want to have the Oculus store in their it doesn't work for my brain. It just doesn't work.
I think it's going to happen. Number one is keep in mind the Splinter Cell in VR. Splinter Cell was a huge game on the Xbox format. I think Oculus would be stupid not to find a way to get that thing onto the Xbox, because it will sell a few units. not only that, I think
But
Microsoft
Microsoft
they
is just going to let people buy Oculus games on their Like Microsoft's going to want the money. Like
yeah.
they want 30% of it. But this is an Oculus game. I don't know. It's a weird idea. I mean, maybe it's conceivable. Like you gotta say, what is Xbox doing now? I could make the argument though that Xbox has dodged this entire thing. They've spent no money on it. They've spent no marketing on. I mean, I know they got their PC Windows mixed reality, but as far as the console, as far as Xbox, that little segment, no money has been spent on VR unless it's been spent in the background that we don't know about. But no money, no marketing, no support. They haven't had to deal with anything. And has it really hurt them? I can make the argument it hasn't hurt them at all because, like, most of their fan base is not saying, Microsoft, for the love of God, give us VR. No, like maybe 1% of their entire fan base is doing that. So Microsoft has basically dodged this entire bullet. And I can make the argument, what incentive do they have to get started anytime soon? Because supporting a VR headset, you're talking about bringing a VR headset into the living room. Grandma's on the couch. Grandma's going to trip over the wires. There's a dog in the living room. There's a cat. There's a baby crawling across the floor. Because see, Phil Spencer, when they were talking to him about VR, he said, Xbox is a living room product. And we think VR in the living room needs to be wireless. Well, that's going to take a while, man, to make a wireless headset that's good enough. We have the Quest. Now, I'll make the argument. I've made this argument. The Quest is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. It is a problem if you're Sony. It's a problem if you're Microsoft. It's a problem if you're Nintendo. Because there's going to be a Quest 2, a Quest 3, a Quest 4. They're going to continue to get better and better and better. They're going to add AR. They're going to add finger tracking right from Jump Street. They're going to get higher resolution. They're going to get lighter. It's not stopping. So doesn't Microsoft need to jump into this game at some point? But you think they're going to jump in somehow with Oculus? But I'm thinking Oculus, Facebook. Like, why would Facebook want to pony up, dude? They got these companies on the run. They paid the money for Oculus. They paid billions for Oculus. They've got their Quest now. You're. It's like they're holding out their hand to Microsoft and they're saying, here, Microsoft, we'll lift you up onto this platform. Why don't they just do this? Step with their foot and just step on their fingers and let them fall to the ground because they got the Quest. Microsoft doesn't.
I think Oculus would benefit from taking their headset over to Scarlett. First of all, Microsoft, I've always said this about Microsoft. They always try to find a way to make $1 million out of the paper bag. And what I mean by that is make a ton of money without spending anything. And with the Oculus, with the Xbox One X, they relied on third-party games to promote this console. We know that Microsoft is lacking in exclusives. So basically, they're sitting back and letting all the third-party developers do all the work for them to push this console. And then you have to factor in that Sony's made over $2 billion off of VR so far. So when Microsoft decides to jump into the VR game, it won't be because of the 1% that's screaming that they want it. They'll jump into it because they see that there's money to be made. And Sony's, as far as tethered headsets goes, next generation belongs to Sony. It's their crown to lose. So I don't think Microsoft is just going to stand by and let another $2 million, go past them. They're going to find a way to get involved in this. And then from the Oculus side of this, when they come out with Splinter Cell in VR, they might only sell maybe 500,000, 250,000, what have you, on PC. But they can probably sell another 500,000 or 1 million on the Xbox format when Scarlet comes out. So I don't see why they wouldn't do something like that because it would benefit both of them. And from Microsoft's standpoint, they don't have to develop anything. All they have to do is flip the switch and let Oculus set up camp on the platform.
Yeah, I mean the only way like the only way I can spin this idea for it to like work logically for me is that Microsoft is going to be willing to let Oculus have a huge share of the revenue somehow. And see, normally what happens is anytime somebody has a store, it's 30%, right? So if Microsoft has an Xbox VR and they have a store where they're selling games, then typically they're going to make 30%. Like Steam makes 30%, Sony makes 30%. Like if you have your game on their platform, the cut is typically 30%. I mean, Epic Game Store obviously is trying to go lower and, they're trying to compete that way. But typically it's 30%. So for Oculus to say, look, you can have our headset, you can have our store, which is an advantage for Microsoft. Because think of all the little developers that they would have to gather up and say, please make a VR game for us. And all the expense they would, there's a lot of headache there. And so if they were to somehow partner with Oculus, they would bypass all of that headache. They bypass all the research and development for making a new headset and all of that. Maybe even Oculus could handle the support for them directly. But for Oculus to agree to say, okay, here's our headset and here's our store, they have to come up with some kind of revenue share. Like they would have to figure out a way to divide that 30% up. And my problem is both of these companies are behemoths, and I don't see how they can agree on how to divide up that 30% that would be on the Xbox platform, because I see Oculus as like, hey, we got our own thing going. We're going to have a Quest 2, we're going to have a Quest 3, and eventually we're going to be competing with Microsoft anyway. I don't know. We'll see. I guess, we'll see. We're going to find out, right, when this Scarlet thing finally launches and all of that. It's an interesting thing. So anyways, is there any other little topics you want to get into before we get out of here?
Yeah, that was an interesting topic, but I think also if Oculus comes to Scarlet, that would be an incentive for some people to buy Scarlet, like me. Currently, I have no plans to buy Scarlet. There's no reason for me to buy it because, again, Microsoft is lacking in first-party games. They're lackluster. And as far as third-party games, I'll be able to get them on a PlayStation 5. So there's absolutely no reason for me to buy Scarlet. But if Oculus comes to the Scarlet platform, that would give people an avenue to have a powerful console to play PC-like VR without spending $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 for a computer.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. If that does happen, I mean, the rumor is out there, and if that does happen, that will be a very interesting partnership. It would be a really interesting partnership. Basically, what it would say to me is that Oculus and Microsoft both know that the war, it's not even worth having a war right now, and so they would come together, they'd work together, because the war is like 7 years later. So they're like, okay, let's work together now because the war is 7 years later, and then we could kill each other at that point, but right now we can work together. Possibly, it could happen. Well, anyway, guys, I tell you what, I'd go for another hour if I wasn't starving. I haven't had dinner yet. I'm here in California. It's 6:38 p.m. I do need to get something to eat at some point in time here. But Lincoln Klay, I got to say, thank you so much for joining me. This was super cool. See, what happened here, folks, is one day I was on Discord and I was like, does anybody want to come on and be interviewed today? Because there's no news. It was like a boring day with no news. And Lincoln said, hey, man, I normally would come on, but I can't. But, I'd like to come on some other time. And I was like, cool, yeah, let's do it. And so it ended up being today. So we were able to have Lincoln Klay on the show. It was cool. The thing is, there's lots of stuff we didn't touch. So much stuff, like you getting a Rift and all of that. And so lots of things we could possibly talk about on another interview. So we definitely could have you back at some point in the future. Lincoln, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on VR 365.
It's been my pleasure. I've been wanting to come on VR 365 for quite a while now, and I finally made it, and thank you for having me.
You made it to the big time, baby.
Pretty much.
All right, Lincoln. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hang up on you. So I'm going to say goodbye. Once again, thanks for everything. It was awesome. And I'll probably talk to you on Discord or something later. But thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and hang up on you, and then I'm going to close this show out, and I'm going to get myself some dinner. All right. So take it easy, Lincoln.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay. Take it easy. All right, that was, let's get back over here to our standard setup. So that was Lincoln Klay that was joining us for this episode. And yeah, I basically said, hey man, want to hop on today? We can do it. And so we were able to cover some news. We also got into some interesting topics. Honestly, the thing that I loved was the sports talk, because I haven't really talked to a real sports gamer that was, a sports gamer from back in the day, but is really interested in VR, and we're thinking about sports gaming eventually coming to VR. How is that going to work out? And then also in terms of like some of the other things that we talked about from PlayStation, this Xbox Scarlet Oculus rumor that is still out there as well. So I thought we had a number of good, interesting things that we touched on. So that worked out well. But this is basically going to go ahead and do it for VR 365. Honestly, see, I always feel like these interviews are fun. Now, the thing is, who did we completely ignore the entire show? Like an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. This show's been running for a while now, right? And who did we completely ignore? We completely ignored chat. So yeah, we completely ignored chat. But you know what? The problem is, folks, I got to give my attention to the person I'm interviewing, and so I think that's the way to go. So unfortunately, I typically ignore chat when I'm doing one. Now, if we had like a 3 or 4 man thing and a couple of dudes were having a discussion, then I could be like, oh, okay, what's going on over here in chat while they're having their discussion? But I got to be the man of the hour. I got to be ready. So it's just kind of hard to get chat in there. Apologies for that. But hopefully you guys liked the content, the discussions that we had, the news that we covered. There was that new game that we saw earlier today. What was it called? Let's see here. What was it called? Death Lap. Yeah, so we found out about a new game, Death Lap, and the developer of that game is the developer of like Anshar, that game that was like on Oculus Go and on Oculus Quest as well. Well, no, wait, Anshar was never on Oculus Quest, but they're very familiar with the Snapdragon 835. So the developers of Death Lap might really make a really nice game. So that kart racing game with the action and the combat looking pretty cool. Sounds like it's coming to the Quest, but also coming to the Rift as well. And you know what we didn't mention with Lincoln, and I almost was going to comment on this, Oculus Connect 6 is just around the corner, folks. Remember this, Titanfall VR, or whatever it's going to be. We're going to find out about the Respawn game. So there is another major AAA game that we're going to find out about in just a couple of weeks. So that'll be exciting. We'll also find out kind of where Oculus is going for the future. Lots of Oculus exclusives we'll probably also find out about as well. So we're starting to get closer and closer to Oculus Connect 6. That's going to be fun. All right, folks, I got to bounce the hell out of here. Now, tomorrow, I'm hoping to have Simplex on the show, another YouTube interview show, another banger tomorrow at noon. Don't know for sure if I talk hella fast when I'm hungry. I'm hungry, let me tell you. So we probably will have Simplex on tomorrow. That'll be cool. We'll be talking to him about the Valve Index. We're going to talk to him about Vive Cosmos. Does the Vive Cosmos need to exist? That's a great question. Should it exist? Should this product exist? So we're going to talk to Simplex about that. If his webcam and everything is working. I know he's dealing with some a transition in his house or something like that, so it might be a little bit chaotic, but we'll hope that works out. All right, well, I'll see everybody tomorrow. Oh, remember, folks, don't forget about this, ladies and gentlebots. Real quick, before we bounce out of here, I almost forgot, but I cannot forget. Let's go to the Rift store, folks, and we got to remember this. There's a free weekend that is going on, guys. It is available now. Transpose. Do you have a CV1? Do you have a Rift S? Then download this. It is free for this weekend. It's already available It is out there now, Transpose. It is free, and you can definitely enjoy it and check it out. So try out Transpose if you get an opportunity. Remember that. All right, so I'm out of here. It's dinner time. It's hammer time. It's dinner time. See you guys tomorrow. Take it easy. Later. Fake smile time. Hi.